I'm Hendrik Draxler from the Open University. We did study on an international survey on confidence learning analytics. The reviewer didn't like the title, so it was renamed to The Pulse of Learning Analytics. But in the conference schedule, it's still Confidence in Learning Analytics. So therefore, I keep the title here. What you see here is the framework we are used to cluster the questions in our survey. And I will introduce the framework a bit before I present the question and the responses from the participants of the study. So first I present the framework, then the survey, some findings, and further conclusions we got from the survey. The Learning Analytics Framework. Well, we started with the Learning Analytics topics 2 years ago, and we made a kind of framework to organize our existing research and new research and how we want to continue with that. And therefore, we made that framework we use to structure our research. And first of that, it's stakeholders. We had different stakeholder groups, institutions, teachers, learners, and parents as well. Maybe it's something new. We found two main objectives for learning analytics. That's reflection and prediction. Educational data, open data, that's all publicly available and protected data. Technologies, so educational data mining, recommender systems, statistical analysis, visualization would also be part of that subdomain. Certain constraints, roughly privacy and ethics, the P word in the discussion. And competence, critical thinking, interpretation skills. And we use now that framework to organize our survey. So opinions from the stakeholders towards the dimension of the framework. We made a survey system with the Quadrix survey system. The main target was, what is the current understanding and the expectations of learning analytics, and is there a common understanding of learning analytics in the stakeholder community? We distributed the survey for 4 weeks. We had totally 260 responses, 165 after cleaning up the data set, 121 people, full records, and the data and a preprint of that article you can find on that link, so the bit.ly link. You can download the survey questions and also the data we got. So the participants of our survey were mainly higher education people that responded to our survey. We tried also to disseminate it to different K-12 levels, schools, and so on, but it was dominated by higher education people, some K-12, vocational, and others. Distribution of the roles of the participants that participated in the survey were mainly teachers, some researchers, learning designers, and managers. And no, you don't need to count up the percentage to 100. They had the opportunity to mark multiple roles in the institution. What we get from response then, we started to disseminate the survey with our friends from SURF that are also here. There's the SURF Netherlands corner, hi there. There we started in a seminar to distribute our survey. We got some responses from there, and then we continued with social networks, the Google group on learning analytics, the JISC mailing list from the UK, and totally we got responses from 31 countries, mainly UK, US, and Netherlands are represented in the data. So when you see that small sign, it's about the framework, and if you see that other sign, that is that one in the left corner, then it's about the survey results. Some info about the framework, the stakeholders. We distinguish the stakeholders in the framework between data subjects and data clients, because most of the time in the conference, students are used as the people that provide the data, but a data subject can also be a teacher from our point of view, and also an institution when you have the governmental view on the learning analytics domain. So roughly we made data subjects and data clients out of it. It's also described in the article in more detail. And what we asked then the participants in the first place, who was expected to benefit the most from learning analytics? And what we found there was that the teachers and learners are the main benefiters of learning analytics, and institution and parents are less expected to benefit from learning analytics research and implementations. Asking about the specific bilateral relationship, so who is benefiting, which relationship, teacher, student, and so on, from learning analytics, most of the people valued the teacher to student relationship will have the most benefit, and the student to teacher relationship, but a bit less, 20% less. Some said student to student, some said teacher to teacher, but dominant relationship that will benefit from learning analytics is the teacher to student, traditional formal education relationship. Objectives, we distinguish here reflection and prediction. Reflection is, well, many visualizations you saw about reflection support and so on. Predictions are recommender systems. The session before this session, actually, in that room, is about recommender systems and learning, predicting, Amazon stuff. So that's the main different objective of learning analytics. Asking the participant of the study about their opinion about what their main objectives of learning analytics was, most of the people said, yeah, reflection support, about 60% of the people answered that. Then unveiling hidden information to support that reflection report, and most of the people, only 60%, said also prediction as an important part of learning analytics. We further asked them then in which way learning analytics would change educational practice in particular areas. We had 13 different areas, this also described in the article. Roughly, say, 11% said there's no changes at all from learning analytics for the educational system. Small changes, 43%, and 45% said there will be extensive changes for the education system. And when we looked into the 13 subdomains, timely information about learners was the best rated item. Again, that's also correlating with the reflection part. Better insights by institutions in their courses. And what was really badly rated is easier grading and objective assessment of students. From the educational data point of view, we did some research from the Datatel research group. We collected some data sets and so on. So this is our entrance point for educational data, and this is the collection of data sets, education data sets we have now in Datatel, and we can provide for research and learning analytics. And asking the participants about what kind of educational data and systems are in their environments, in their schools available. Most of them said, yeah, learning management systems are there, student information system, but also a lot of external services like Google Docs, Facebook, Twitter, SlideShare. That was quite surprising. Asking about the context and what they expect to come from educational data, most of the people, of the researchers, said they want to see added context information about learning and the learning process in the data. Teachers also want to see context information about education, about learning and the learning process. And the managers were more interested in sharing within the institution and then anonymization of the data to facilitate that sharing of data and make it available for different target groups within the organization. Technologies, this is an example how we cluster technologies in recommender systems for learning. So just clustering different support tasks, approaches, operation, user models, domain model, and so on. And something similar could be done for learning analytics, or maybe it can easily adapt it from that one. And then again, prediction, we have the recommender system part, and reflection, we have these visualizations of the reflection support. Asking the people about the technologies, how much they trust in accurate, appropriate learning analytics results. Most of the people said, well, a few on the learning progress, they are really trusting in that. That 60% said, okay, we have trust in that we can see how the learning process of students are going on. Second place was predicting the learning resource, assessment, first point, and very last 2 points were prediction of peer students and prediction of learner performance. So the predicting how the learning goes on is quite, well, the people don't have trust that learning analytics can help in this domain. Constraints mainly is based on legal, privacy, ethic, and ownership. So the typical constraints and showstoppers of learning analytics. And asking the people about the effect size of learning analytics on these different constraint points, most of the people said the effect size of learning analytics on privacy and ethics will not be that big, what is maybe surprising. Most of the people said that data ownership, data openness, and transparency of the educational system will be affected most by learning analytics research. And what we also found from the open comments from the people that they said, If we have data ownership and data openness available, then privacy and ethics will adapt to these things. Competences. And competences, I don't know if you know that system that's from the OECD, the PISA study, where you can explore and compare different countries, reading ability, mathematics, and so on. Well, if you use the system, it's quite complicated. So competences for learning analytics is e-literacy, interpretation skills of the data, self-directness, ethical understanding of what you get presented and how you argue your system. Asking the participants about that, we also had 7 subdomains, so like numerical skills, IT literacy, critical reflection, evaluation skills, ethical thinking, analytic skills, and self-directedness. What we found here was that the most important competences for learning analytics in institutions is critical reflection and self-directness of the students. Point 1, numerical skills and ethical thinking was actually really neglected, and that's not important for learning analytics outcomes. Another thing that was quite surprising is that 70% of the people that participated in the study said that the learners are not competent enough and independent to learn independently from learning analytics results. At that point, we missed to ask if they think that if the teachers will be competent enough to use learning analytics results, but maybe that's something for future studies. Limitations of our study. There are quite some limitations, like of every study. Well, you saw the dominance of responses from the higher education sector. That's definitely one of the limitations, so it's not representative for K-12 and so on. Also, we tried to disseminate it to these channels. We did not get so much feedback from them. We didn't ask the students how they feel about learning analytics, so that's also something that is missing in that study. There's a low awareness of learning analytics in the field, we feel, and the most of the people that replied are really innovators and early adapters. So that's also one limitation for a confidence in learning analytics study. And mainly opinions, we mainly collected opinions from Western cultures, so we got no responses from China, no responses from Russia, and so that's actually a pity, and was also surprising for us that our network's more Westly oriented. So the summaries of the findings from that survey, takeaway messages for each of the subdomains. Stakeholders, main beneficiaries for learning analytics are learners and teachers, followed by their organizations. Biggest benefit would be gained in a teacher-to-student relationship, and learners require teacher support to learn from learning analytics results. Seeing that, we think about, okay, what's the innovative power of learning analytics? Because what you see here is continuing with the traditional formal education system and adding learning analytics to it. But it's not about peer support. It's not about recommending other students to each other. So all the innovative parts of the teaching are not actually represented in that study. For objectives, well, reflection supports the main objective from the stakeholders by revealing hidden information from the learners. And then again, the question, okay, reflection support only for teacher-student relationship? Is there not something more we can support and innovate with learning analytics? Educational data. The context information from learners in the learning process was the best rated item. And anonymization is the second most important data attribute discussed in the educational data field. And willingness to share if the data is anonymous was frequently mentioned by the participants. And then we had a question again, and was also discussed in a workshop yesterday, can we achieve a collection of reference data sets for learning analytics if we have appropriate anonymization procedures? And the people are willing to share the data, actually. So that would be one goal that would be interesting for the community. Technologies. Trust in learning analytics algorithm is not so well developed from the survey appears. But on the other hand, there was a high confidence on gaining a comprehensive view of the learning process. So how accurate, question, can we measure a learning progress? What can I tell the people in Dutch school when I come to them and say, oh, when we apply these technologies, you have an accurate level of this % that the student is performing like that? So one challenging question here. Constraints. In the constraint domain, data ownership is the most important topic. Learning analytics leads to breaches of privacy, but privacy and ethical aspects are of lesser importance for the stakeholders. That was quite surprising. Many of them hope with anonymization and other approaches that can be solved. And the good answer, the good message is actually that many organizations have ethical boards and guidelines in place, and they also adapt to the learning analytics field. So we also see that at Open University, the ethical board was reinforced, and we have some limitations, things that are not possible that were possible in the past. But on the other hand, you can make a request to do a learning analytics study now to that ethical board, and then you can also access to data that was not available before. And here the question, do we need new policies for data ownership and privacy? Do we need to rethink what data ownership is? Does the data belong to the student, or does the data belong to the institution? And how we deal with the privacy issues. Competences. There was skepticism that learning analytics will lead to more independence of learners to control their learning process. So there's a training need to guide students to more self-directness and critical reflection. So do we need mandatory courses on statistics for the education sector? Does every teacher have a course on that to deal with the learning analytics tools that he will face in the future? Maybe another requirement from that study. Future research, ideas, how we could continue with that study. First of all, we want to encourage the community, all your people, to have a look in our data, make your own conclusions about it. It's all there behind that link, and we are looking for partners to survey public bodies like schools, foundation, other governmental organizations to get a more spread and representative picture of the learning analytics stakeholders, and compare the learning analytics in different educational cultures. So comparing what we found here, what the results in China could be. So could imagine that it's pretty different. So extending the survey to more Eastern countries. And this is really how you have to see that study. We did that study, we did it for 1 month, and we did the first survey. And if people are interested to continue with that kind of research and to relaunch that survey also with more questions or something, you're welcome. So for the next years, just contact us and let's see what we can do about that. Another thing we would like to do, and we have very positive experience with several projects, is a group concept mapping approach, part of that survey, to identify consensus about particular issues in learning analytics. In the past, we get really surprising results from this group concept mapping approach. Finally, thanks for the projects that supported that study, and open for questions. How was I in time?
Very good. It's only 20 minutes, so you're fine.
Wow.
Plenty of time for questions. I would ask that if people can come to the microphone, that would be great, because this is on video and people won't hear your questions otherwise.
It's a small, quick question. You listed learning management systems and course management systems. Do you have any idea, are those just terminology differences, or are they two, did you see them, or do your respondents see them as two different kinds of systems?
That's a very good one. Learning management system, course management system. Well, what we see, for instance, in our German partner organization, RWTH Aachen, they have a course management system, and people have to sign up for the courses, and then they use a learning management system. So there seems to be a difference for some organizations.
Can you speak a little bit more about can you speak a little bit more about the students and them not being competent to understand or use the learning analytics, and maybe a little bit more, do you have an understanding of where that came from in terms of, are they not ready to handle the statistics and the math, or?
Well, I cannot tell you too much about that. Well, we had that question if they feel that the students are able to deal with the outcomes and visualizations from learning analytics results. And most of the participants that were researchers and teachers really had doubts about that, where the 70% comes from. Why that is, I don't really know, and I'm really interested to have the same questions for the teachers or for the institutions. Well, I cannot give you more answers than we found there. Actually, we limit our survey to having 3 questions per each of the domains. Otherwise, it would be overwhelming again. We don't get the responses. But maybe some research on that with qualitative interviews on that would be interesting.
I just have a suggestion for future research. One of the things I'm always interested in when I look at a survey is it generalizable to a particular population? In this survey, it seems like it was kind of almost like a snowball sample, just sending it to different people. I would encourage you in the future to use conference attendee lists from an event like this to go out and survey individuals. So that way it could at least generalize to the population of people that attend this conference.
What was the term? I didn't get what the system you recommended or the approach.
Well, what I'm suggesting is the next time you launch a survey like this, why don't you use as the population the individuals that have come to this conference?
Yeah.
Then you can at least generalize to the people interested in learning analytics enough to come to a conference like this.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that. Well, we started with that with the seminar on learning analytics in the Netherlands, and then we spread it from there. But using a conference like this sure would be a good opportunity.
Just about reach. You mentioned earlier that there were no big concerns about ethical issues. Were there any differences between the stakeholder groups? Were managers more concerned than the teachers, for example? That's quite a surprising result.
We were also surprised about that, but mainly the manager said there will be anonymization. They really had trust in the anonymization of the data, and that will solve the ethical and privacy issues or the representation of the data to
privacy.
certain groups. What they really emphasized is not everybody should see all information, so that you provide tailored information for specific target groups, for teachers and so on, and that will solve the privacy and ethical issues. But I'm also surprised about it, because yesterday we didn't want to talk about the P word, and then we had it as a grand challenge in the workshop again. So.
Okay, thank you.
One thing that seems to be true at our institution is that concerns about privacy differ very much based on age. And when we first started doing some of this work, we were quite concerned that students would find it super creepy that we knew things about them. And many of them believe that everyone knows everything about them already. And they see some benefits to that, so they're willing to give it up. Other questions? Yes, go ahead.
Just a quick question. To what extent can you be sure that your subjects understood what you meant by learning analytics?
Oh, that's a tough one, yeah. To what extent I can... Well, I think if they, different approach about ideas about learning analytics could be, well, we disseminated to specific communities, and it's also one of the limitations that we ask actually innovators and the Google group of learning analytics. So we really put it to people that deal with the topic. We did not went to any schools and asked, hey, what do you think about learning analytics? And they said, what is learning analytics? So we got responses. And from the 260 people that answered, and after the cleanup, 156 really answered the whole survey. I expect that they have a clue what learning analytics is. But I also had the impression from the different answers about what the impact will be on learning analytics and what technologies will it change and will it have an impact on specific domains, that the people really have different ideas what learning analytics will be and how it will change the education system.
Other questions? If not, let's thank our speaker again.
Thanks.